Let's talk about the preachers who have shaped you and your homiletical development. You've talked about your father. You've talked about the pastor that you interned with. So let's talk about the voices that continue to appear again and again. Who are your preaching mentors?
Well, my dad, who was my first pastor, may he rest in peace, he talked about teaching in a way, he would say sometimes things are better caught than taught.
I've heard that before. I think my dad says that.
He believed in that. And I caught a lot of homiletical practices from him. He wrote in his Bible, I have one of his Bibles where there are notes, copiously written in the margins. And sometimes they'd be sermon outlines, or sometimes they'd be just insights that came to him while he was doing his own reading, Lectio Divina. And so he was one who was quiet and calm and deep in the way he put sermons together and delivered them. He had more of a teaching style than a preaching style, so much so that when I started preaching, I said that's what I was doing. I was teaching, I wasn't really preaching.
Right. For some, they're synonymous.
For some, they're synonymous. But for others, I think, especially in the African, in the tradition of any African diaspora, preaching definitely has a different character than teaching does. So my dad definitely was one mentor that I learned from. I caught a lot of his practices where he would be a deep student of the word. He memorized passages of scripture from memory. And so for a long time, I followed that pattern. Then more lately, as I've begun to teach preaching, and I would put different models of preachers for my students to watch and read, I have found myself really inspired by the preaching of two particular women. Reverend Dr. Teresa Fry Brown is one. Reverend Dr. Gina Stewart is the other. And they have not been my mentors directly, but I've learned from their preaching that there is a way to be eloquent and powerful at the same time. And spirit-filled. Now, I didn't say this in the beginning, but my background is Pentecostal. Like early childhood, Pentecostal and Anglican, side by side. It's a long story. But I understood preaching to be moving, a moving experience. And so it was moving, but it also had to be meaningful. Meaningful and moving preaching is what these two women have modeled for me. And one of these days when I grow up, I'll